Kate Mulafalcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome back by popular demand, DEBBRA LUPIEN, voice of the Akashic Records. Hi, DEBBRA.
Hi.
Thank you for getting back together because this is always fun. And today we are going to have DEBBRA access the Akashic Records and ask questions of Marilyn Monroe. Now, everybody who knows my channel knows we've been doing this book. I covered the book, the videos are down there, just scroll through. I also made a playlist with all the videos pertaining to the book. There's a separate playlist with my conversations with the author, Larry Jordan. You can find our conversations in the videos, or you can go to the playlists, either way. I have another conversation with him coming up this week, ready to post. We're hoping to do one more in honor of the anniversary of her death, which is next week, August 4th. So with that in mind, actually, time has no meaning, DEBBRA. We're talking to everybody on August 4th. That's when I'm going to upload this.
Okay.
So it's August 4th, and it's the anniversary of Marilyn's death. You might see it listed some places as August 5th, because that's when they officially collected her body from her home, but she'd already been dead for quite a number of hours, well past before midnight. So it was August 4th. So, DEBBRA, are you ready? I'm going to apologize. This may be a little bit disorganized tonight because I was telling DEBBRA I have 6 full legal pads of information. Let's see how this works. Okay, so shall we just start asking questions of Marilyn?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to her.
I am too. We've had some very interesting conversations lately. People that we weren't sure how we would be received, and it was a pleasant surprise.
I love to be remembered.
Well, my all-time least favorite was Lindbergh. I'm still mad at him. Okay, so questions for Marilyn. Can we begin?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Her childhood. Marilyn, tell us about your childhood, starting from the earliest memories that you have. We have information, but we would like to hear it coming accurately from you. I'm sure you know, there's so much misinformation and misleading disinformation out there. It's terrible. So,
okay. So, Marilyn, Norma Jean. Can you tell us about your childhood, your earliest memory? We would love to get to know you at that level, if you're willing. She's thinking about it. Earliest memory. Warmth. Oh my gosh. She has a memory of herself as an infant being wrapped in a receiving blanket in her mother's arms. That's not a normal thing. Okay, so.
Yeah, it's not as common as you would think, but it's also not unheard of.
Yeah, she felt warm, secure, and loved. And I think we'll get into that more, but it feels like because that was not the norm going forward. So it was special because of that. Okay. And that's such a precious memory that she holds close to her heart.
So I want to ask more specific questions, but I also don't want to bring up trauma that she'd rather not deal with. Is it okay to ask questions about things that we've heard that were unpleasant? And you might let her know how we have to be so careful tiptoeing about the rules of these recordings. We're not able to be quite as frank as we maybe like to be. So is she okay with us asking personal questions that might be painful?
Yeah, so Marilyn, are you okay with us asking personal questions that might be on the painful side. Yeah, she says, I'm here. I'm ready to talk whatever you want to talk about. And if you get something that's too painful, I'll let you know.
Okay. So it's pretty well accepted fact that she had a very traumatic childhood. She was in and out of foster homes. Her mother was unwell. Rumor, I don't know if this has ever been verified, but rumor is that both her grandmother and her mother tried to suffocate her at a couple of different times in her very early childhood, like infancy and early toddlerhood. Is that true?
So, Marilyn, can you tell us if that rumor is true that both your mother and grandmother at different times tried to end things for you early? Oh, goodness. I don't like to think about that.
Would
She's not done yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't like to think about that. I'm not sure actually because it's something that I pushed away, and I honestly can't tell you whether it's true or not.
Okay.
Yeah, just
well, because I'm an armchair psychiatrist, it seems to me that she had a lifelong fear of suffocation. That was her big fear. She even once told somebody, I'm not afraid of flying, but I'm afraid of suffocating. And she had trouble with sleep. And some forms of insomnia, you can't fall asleep. That wasn't her problem. She couldn't stay asleep. She'd wake up in the middle of the night struggling and feeling suffocated. And I just wonder, is it fair to make connections there?
so, Marilyn, it's said that you would wake up feeling as if you were suffocating. So, could you tell us, is that possibly connected to the stories of your early childhood experience? She's saying no, it was a past life issue. And maybe that's where the rumor came because an armchair psychologist made that connection, not understanding that such things can be past life.
Oh, no, I do understand that. And I'm not the only one who's made the connection. No, but I do understand that. And I think it's actually even more interesting. It's more enlightening for the rest of us because it draws that connection to a past life. It's easier for us to make connections to actual events in this particular incarnation. It's much more enlightening to be told that it connects earlier, previous. So, that's so interesting. I'm not going to dwell too much on her childhood. She was in and out of foster care, and some were long-term and some were shorter term. She actually was in an orphanage, and they put her back into an orphanage when she was 9 years old, and it was very traumatic. Is she comfortable talking about that at all?
So, Marilyn, would you be comfortable talking about your experiences with foster care, maybe around the age of 9? Yeah, she says sure, it's okay. But she's also adding, this is really interesting, that she came into this life with a boatload of victimization. That's why you're reading and hearing about all of these traumatic experiences she had. So her mission as her life as Marilyn was to work out of that victimization. And she did some. There's still more to go, and she will in the future. But she actually made some good progress there that she's pleased about.
Did she have that understanding and that insight at the time, or is this something that she now understands?
Did you understand that at the time when you were Marilyn? No, she didn't. But she just knew she had this really compelling drive to work her way out. She's showing me a picture of herself like being in a well, and she's dressed like Alice in Wonderland, and she's going hand over hand up the rope. That was her life, pulling herself out.
Well, that answers a question I have a little later on. I've always been so curious how people are formed by their early childhood experiences. And for some people, it stunts them where they are for the rest of their lives. And they fall into all sorts of negative behaviors. And well, we all know the story, right? And for other people, it seems to light a fire under them to do better and to be different. And I wondered where she got her drive, her ambition. And it wasn't a clawing ambition, it was wanting to be elevated, right? There's a little difference there. And to improve herself, just education and skills. And she was always taking classes and lessons. And she was at UCLA taking classes, and while she was acting, you know, just a really a lifetime learner. And I find that fascinating. So was that the motivation?
So the motivation for taking all those classes, was that connected to the past life trauma? Yeah, she just had this drive that she didn't really know where it came from, but it was, I'm here for more and better. This is not who I am. I'm not willing to live with this or accept it as my reality. And I know I can change it. So, yeah, so she had that understanding.
So when she was about 14, 15, I think her mother or her foster mother, I'm trying to remember, kind of orchestrated a dating situation with her and a guy called Harry Keel, who later became a very famous actor, Howard Keel, in musicals. Yeah. So she dated him a little bit when she was younger. He kind of regarded her as too young, but then later, a few years later, they met up again. And so could she talk about that, how that all unfolded?
Yeah, so could you talk to us about your relationship with Harry, who became Howard Keel? Oh, he was a sweetheart. He was a big teddy bear. I enjoyed spending time with him. Yeah, he was a little old for me, but given the situation that I lived in, it was just a welcome, big hug to hang out in that warm, accepting energy. And the fact that he thought I was pretty hot didn't hurt either. So, anything else you want to know about that?
Well, before we talk about before we talk about her marriage, which came shortly after that, I just have to ask this every opportunity that I get. Can she describe Los Angeles at that time?
Okay, so Marilyn, when she was a little girl or when she was older?
Just any memories she has of Los Angeles of the past, because I'm sure she knows it's changed so dramatically. I'm very, very drawn to that time, like pre 1950s, between about the 1880s to about the 1950s. LA just completely changed. So I'm curious.
Okay. So, Marilyn, can you tell us about any early memories you might have of Los Angeles? What was it like? What did it feel like to you? Well, by my standards, it was a big city, although it was nothing compared to what it is now. But it felt big, and it felt like it was teeming with energy, potential. There was a dark side to it, but there was also the light side. So if you were careful, you could walk that line and you could benefit by being there, but you had to be very careful because it was like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, and the woods was full of lions and tigers and bears. It
Oh,
was
yes.
that energy.
Predators. She's absolutely right. Full of predators, as unfortunately she found out. I have kind of a personal question. What was your favorite beach?
Did you have a favorite beach in LA? No, not particularly. It doesn't feel to me like she hung out at the beach a whole lot. Maybe for photos?
For photos, towards the end of her life, she did a beautiful, beautiful photo session on the beach at sunset. It was gorgeous. And I think it was Santa Monica. I think it was right outside. If I'm remembering correctly, this book is 700 plus pages. So, right outside the Lawfords house, which becomes interesting. But
Yeah.
she ran on the beach. But since we're talking about
Yeah.
it, let me ask her
But
about that.
she's giving me the impression that being a fair-skinned person, she didn't spend a lot of time on the beach because she wouldn't have been as beautiful if she had let her skin get all,
Yeah,
sunburned.
when I think I'm the same way. When I think of the beach, I don't think about lying in the sun. I think about communing with the waves. I just like to walk the beach, and there's nothing better than a beach in cold weather. So I was curious about that, but it's unimportant. It's okay. So when she was about 15 or so, her mother, or her foster mother, set her up on a date with a guy called James Doherty, and they ended up getting married. I think she was just 16. Uh, it felt very much like an arranged situation. She was facing having to return to an orphanage because she was still underage, and her foster family was moving away, and her mother couldn't take her. Got the hiccups, sorry. So she, I don't want to say capitulated, but that's kind of what it felt like. What did she feel about him? What did she feel about getting married at 16?
So, Marilyn, can you tell us about your experience getting married at 16? Were you willing, eager, unwilling? What was that all about? It was a convenience, and I wasn't terribly excited about it because I had all these dreams about maybe someday this big special wedding and this, man of my dreams. But it was a necessity for my future, and he was a nice enough man. I was really blessed with him because he provided that bridge for me in my life so that I could go on and become Marilyn.
So, what did you think about him joining the Navy?
What did you think about him joining the Navy? Well, I wasn't crazy about it because I was a little frightened and insecure, and having him around made me feel safe. And then all of a sudden, I went from that cozy home that we were building together to being what felt like abandoned.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a happy time for me. I was very insecure and frightened.
Yeah. Yeah. I got that impression. So eventually, he ended up being stationed at Catalina, and things were looking up. Catalina is a nice place. So could she talk about how she felt and what it was like there, and what famous people did she see? Because that's a hangout for Hollywood.
Okay. So, can you tell us about your time in Catalina? Did you enjoy it there? Oh, sure. It was lots of fun. Lots of sunshine, lots of bright, happy, shiny people. It was a little, it was like it was removed from the whole LA scene. So it had a different vibe to it. It was more relaxed. And for some reason, she's not feeling comfortable. There's a little antsy about it. There was something, oh, she was objectified by so many of the soldiers.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
that made
exactly
her,
what. Yeah, yeah.
that made her uncomfortable.
And she's right. She's on an island off the coast. It's a little hard to go to interviews and auditions when you're when you're off the coast. Yeah, I can understand that. And she was young. She was like 16, 17. Everybody's restless when they're that age. It's
Yeah.
hard. So eventually she ended up, he was obliged to do something for the Navy. I don't remember. She was on her own essentially, and she got a job in a factory. I think it might have been in Long Beach. She can correct me. I can't remember now. Huntington Beach, Long Beach. But she ended up being seen by a photographer who was coming through to do publicity shoot, for the company or the factory. And she got into modeling. So I was so impressed. She made hundreds and hundreds of covers of magazines all over the world within 6 months of this being discovered at the factory. Could she talk about that?
Yeah, so Marilyn, could you tell us about your experience becoming a model with this photographer that you met at the factory? It was like the angels delivered him to me and changed my life. Getting
So
out of that factory, being allowed to show my beautiful side proudly, not having to hide it. That's what I really enjoyed about the modeling. I could take control of my assets and share them in a way that I chose to, with, of course, his shaping and guidance. But it opened so many doors. And
mhm.
because I was on all of those covers, people felt like they knew me, and suddenly I had friends everywhere I went. It was a heady experience, a little overwhelming at times, but it's like I went from being this dormouse to being the glamour girl, and it felt pretty good.
Well, she wasn't just the glamour girl, though. I think she's not giving herself the credit that she deserves. She was gorgeous, but she also worked very, very hard. She would get assignments to go to trade shows up in garlic country up by Salinas, and have to stand all day in a big warehouse or something pointing at cars, or doing one of those sorts of things all day long. She never said no. She said yes to every job they ever offered her. Nothing was beneath her. She wasn't too good for anything. She worked really, really hard. And the thing that I was struck by, as somebody, ironically enough, as somebody who hates to have her picture taken, it astounds me that every photographer who ever worked with her said, oh my God, she had the ability to look like a different person in every single picture. It was incredible. So I don't know if there's a question there, just making that observation and just
Also, Marilyn, do you have any comments about that story that you were sort of a chameleon in front of the camera, that you changed? I don't know how to describe it. It just came natural to me. I was just being myself, but moving
oh,
around, it's almost like she's showing me this picture of, like, she's got these fractal mirrors on her, like a prism,
mhm,
so that
yeah.
when the camera shot her, it was getting one of those prisms. All of those different facets were part of her.
How much of that now can she answer? How much of that was a photographic trick of the lens? How much of that had more to do with uh, spiritual energy?
Marilyn, do you know? Did that have something to do with spiritual energy, or was it uh, gifted photographers using different tricks of the lenses? Well, it might have been partly the photographers and their skills, because they were skilled, there's no question. But yes, now I can say absolutely it was the spirituality coming through, but it was an unconscious thing for me. I marveled when people talked about it because I didn't really understand it
Yeah,
myself. And it
yeah.
was sort of a fascinating thing. I always wondered about it. So it was really interesting when she crossed over to understand what that was about, to
Little
connect
peek
with.
into, peek into past
Yeah,
lives, right? Yeah,
yeah.
that's so fascinating. Well, I'm just here to say that I never fully appreciated anything. What little I knew about her life, I didn't appreciate what a remarkable person she really was, because the stereotyped Marilyn
Yeah.
wasn't her at all. And I have such respect for her integrity and her really intelligence. She was brilliant. And more than anything, this came through over and over and over. And I have to say this to her because I laughed about it with the author of the book. When I was making the videos about the book, it got to the point where I would say, now, everybody repeat after me. Marilyn remained friends with that person for the rest of her life. She had a knack. She would meet somebody like her ex-boyfriend's former wife and daughter, and they became her friends for the rest of her life. And people that she would her dentist became her friend for the rest of her life. Really, just all these different people from various parts of her life. It was remarkable. So I'm just passing that observation on. I don't think enough attention is given to that. There's so much more to her.
Yeah, she's saying that she took an interest in people. They were like unpolished gems.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, it was interesting to get to know them and see the polish, to really understand who they were at their soul. Not just these faceless people who passed through her life, but she enjoyed getting to know them, to see the inner side of each person.
Well, that was, her true worth as a soul coming through. That was somebody who had inherent understanding of what's valuable, that for sure. Okay, let's move on here. So, or I'm gonna have all of us crying here in a minute. Okay, so after she broke up with her husband, because they just went their separate ways, it was okay, it was amicable, they were very young. Rumor has it she had a boyfriend, and that's the only thing anybody knows that I could find out. So my question is, does she know who I'm talking about? Who was it?
So, Marilyn, was there a boyfriend that came right after you and James Doherty separated? Was there a boyfriend during that time? Yes, there was a sweet young boy. And is he somebody that we would know? He was her secret love. She's not telling.
Oh,
That one
come
he's
on.
holding close. It was a very special relationship.
Well, I'm not going to pry, but that's funny. We're being teased. So she got her divorce. I think she got the car too. That's pretty good. She got the car, and she caught the eye of, well, she had already signed a contract with I think 20th Century Fox. I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was 20th Century Fox. So she came up in contact with a lot of these big names that we always hear. So I'm going to throw a few of them out and just ask her what her impression was of them. So the first one would be Joseph Schenck. If I'm saying
Joseph
that right.
Schenck. So, Marilyn, did you know Joseph Schenck?
Oh, yeah.
She did. Okay. And anything that you could share with us about him? She didn't know him well. She knew of him. They were acquainted. He was a nice enough man, but nothing special. Not somebody that she would have added to her collection of special people.
Right. Yeah, there's always been rumor that she was his mistress, but people who have some sense have always said, no, that's just idle rumor. They were friends in the sense that she would get invited to his big events at his house. But that's basically, all it was.
She says, but Granny, that was her being useful. It benefited him to have her there.
Already.
And so that reflected upon the relationship.
Yeah, I didn't ever get the impression that they were, like that. No, just in passing, I would ask her, would you not agree, Marilyn, that Hollywood is really prime territory for users and pragmatists and predatory type people? They're everywhere, right? How do you know who to trust?
Well, she said, clearly I didn't do so well in that department.
Well, which of us does,
But, she was aware and she did try. She was a little selective, but it suited her to go to those parties sometimes. But she knew she was not being invited because they were close. It was because it helped him.
Well, she said earlier that it was a fine line, use other people and being used, and protecting yourself and not crossing that line, becoming predatory yourself. I think that's the struggle, right? So what about Zanuck?
Who?
Zanuck.
Oh, Daryl Zanuck. Okay. So, what about Daryl Zanuck? What did you think about him? Well, he was the toast of the town because he had all this respect and this great reputation. But I kept my distance. There was a professional relationship there, but he wasn't somebody I wanted to get close to.
She inherently had good sense.
Mm.
So I recently did a video. I read a book written by this author's daughter, Sarah Jordan Hines, and she kind of wrote profiles of actors and actresses who originated in the Midwest, ended up in Hollywood. One of the people that we covered was Dorothy Dandridge. And Marilyn was very good friends with Dorothy Dandridge. And I wonder if she'd talk about that because, that wasn't typical. And I know you know why, right? So I'm curious if she could talk about her.
Yeah. So, Marilyn, could you tell us about your relationship with Dorothy Dandridge? I loved Dorothy. She was so talented, so beautiful, and should have had more opportunity, but given the times, we understand what that was about. It felt good being in her company because she was a more grounded, down to earth, pragmatic person because of the life she had to live and finding success in spite of those boundaries that she had to skirt. So we had a great time together. We could let our hair down, kick off our shoes, and just giggle and tell stories. And she was just like home, folks. I instantly felt comfortable with her and cherished her friendship.
Yeah, she and Ava Gardner were good friends with Dorothy Dandridge and really stood up for her. I watched some old stuff of Dorothy Dandridge's, and I have to say, I liked the things that I fully appreciated. She had a gorgeous voice. There's no doubt about that. But I really thought that she was compelling. You could feel the magnetism when she was a teenager. And she was kind of what you would have hoped that Shirley Temple would have grown into. I found Shirley Temple hard to take when she became a teenager and got a little older. But Dorothy Dandridge was all the better aspects of the charm of Shirley Temple in a teenage form. I just thought she was fabulous and just fun to talk to somebody who knew her. So let's see here. There's endless talk in this book, and it's all backed up, and it's all very interesting about the people that she worked with and the people in power that she had to deal with, and the jealousy and the lies that were spread about her to sort of stop her rise, stop her career, people who were jealous of her, rumors about this guy, rumors about that guy, and people who knew her really well, who were truly her friends, put a stop to it as best they could. The rumors persist, but they weren't true. She was often, and I want to ask her about this, I don't want to be offensive about it. These are not my words, okay? Because I know that this is not true. But she was often sort of accused of looking for sugar daddies and using rich men to get ahead. And I know that's not true because there were millionaires that wanted to leave their wives and marry her. I mean, this happened several different times in her life. She didn't do that. She didn't take advantage of them like that. I wonder if she could talk about what the reality was and how she feels about the rumors.
Okay. Marilyn, can you tell us about the rumors of you and these very wealthy men? How did you feel about that? And any interesting tidbits you can offer us? Well, I have to say, people often confuse me with my characters. I
And
was a fine actress. I can say that now. I wasn't always that confident, but I was, and I did an excellent job of portraying a gold digger. So people got that confused in their minds and they thought that was the real me. But having actually portrayed those characters gave me insight into what that kind of a life would be like. and I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I was looking for true love. I was making my own money. I didn't need anybody to pay my way. So they were mistaken. That's what I can say about that.
Well, she was an excellent actress because people bought that whole persona, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
She was very intelligent. She was very independent. She was very self-supporting. She was discerning about the men that she did allow herself to get involved with. And I'm going to put this out as a statement because I don't know how to ask the question, but I'm hoping to get some feedback. It seems like at her core, she was, like she said, looking for love, maybe insecure about her abilities at the time, and allowed those anxieties to sort of get in the way. Would she agree with that, or could she clarify that?
Marilyn, could you speak to that comment about getting involved with people who didn't truly appreciate you and the insecurity? Yeah, well, having grown up the way I did, I had a lot of insecurities, and I suppose I probably never got through all of them, although I worked really hard at it. But I was always looking for somebody to be my protector.
Mm-hmm.
At the heart, I was like, she's showing me this picture of this white Angora cat who's all curled up, and that's who she was at her inner self. And she just wanted to be loved, cherished, and taken care of. And so it's like people like Arthur Miller. Now, that was a big
Oh,
mistake.
we'll
But
get to him. I have a lot to
yeah,
ask about him.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you distracted me. You said the name of Arthur Miller, and not a good
Sorry.
person. No, that's okay. I'm curious about, now she seemed to get involved on a professional level with people who took advantage of her by picking at the scab, constantly making her feel less confident and make her feel insecure, and so she got dependent on them, and then they could feed off her, is what happened. And that's what it looks like from the outside anyway. So she had this acting coach named Natasha Lights, I hope I'm saying that right. For 6 years they made a bunch of movies together, but she seemed to kind of interfere with her ability to act on the stage. She would stand right outside camera range and hold her hand while she, you wouldn't be able to see her, but she'd be doing her acting, and her coach was holding her hand for support and kind of encouraged that dependency. And then they had a falling out. Don't know what that was about. Could she talk about that relationship and what brought it to an end?
So, Marilyn, your coach, Natasha, could you talk to us about why she was standing there holding your hand when you were performing? Well, I had anxiety, and sometimes, particularly if I was working with somebody new who I had elevated and highly respected, it gave me confidence to hold her hand. So I started that. It was my fault. But then, yes, she did take advantage. And there came a point where it became a hindrance rather than a help. And we just had to go our separate ways because I needed to grow. But also, she's circling back. I want to say that part of what happened with Natasha and others after her was a repeating pattern from past lives that I
Yeah.
needed to work on, which is why it kept coming up, giving me the opportunity to finally break out of that old habit, that pattern.
It's interesting. If you look at the course of her life, that makes enormous sense that she struggled her whole life to take personal agency, to take control. And as soon as she solidly got her power and started taking command, you're fired and you're fired and you I'm going to hire because I know you've got my back, that's when she died. I just think that maybe that was that lesson. Am I off the mark there, or?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, we have things to learn in this. I'm getting very metaphysical here. We have things to learn
Yeah.
in this lifetime. And once you've accomplished that, you don't need to stick around, maybe. And she did need to learn that lesson. I mean, she admits it, it's obvious, you know,
Yeah.
doctors and therapists and agents and partners and husbands and all of them made her less secure, more anxious, and dependent. And it always ended badly. As soon as she put a stop to it, as soon as she said, "You're no longer my doctor, you're no longer my housekeeper, I'm taking control of my life. You're not in charge of my money anymore. You're not my lawyer. I'm changing my will." And she did all of this in a small amount of time. And then she died. And I wonder, lessons learned? So I
Like
don't know
wrapping it up in a nice package, right?
Yeah.
So, Marilyn, can you speak to that? Was that you finally getting out of those old destructive patterns near the end when you were taking control? Was that karmic work that you were doing? So, yes, absolutely it was. But she's also saying we have multiple exit points in a lifetime. That was an exit point, obviously, because I took it, but I could have stayed longer. Others got involved and facilitated that
we're
being
going to get to that.
exit point. So what I'm getting from her is, yeah, I'm finally taking control and I'm doing it, and it would have been nice to live and enjoy it for a little longer.
To reap the rewards a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
But, you know, we also have these soul relationships, and who knows what your coming or going or staying might play a part in somebody else's evolution. You know, it's complicated. Okay, so she had a boyfriend, Karger. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. He was really wealthy. What was his first name? I want to say Fred. I have a hard time keeping track of all of these people, and they all have not easy to remember names. So she broke up with Natasha, and she had this friend, Fred Karger. He was a music director. He was older and he fancied himself a bit of a Lothario. But they lived in a big house together. He was married, but he had like two separate lives going on. And they actually remained in an affectionate relationship for the rest of his life, that he eventually died. But he kind of played a little bit of a Professor Higgins kind of role with her, you know, helping her to get etiquette and how to dress and the kinds of things you'd learn as a child if you had any kind of a stable family life, which she didn't. So, as with many relationships in her life, he died. They had gone their separate ways and he died. But his daughter loved her better than her own mother. And they remained close. So could she talk about that relationship with the Kargers and how that played in her life?
Marilyn, could you tell us about your relationship with the Carter family? Anything that you'd like to comment on, maybe that's not widely known, or what was special about it for you? She said, Fred and I had mutual respect for one another.
Yeah.
That was what made that relationship special. And apparently his wife didn't mind that he was carrying on because she was in it for the money, and as long as she was taken care of, she was okay. So they had a warm relationship, and it's almost like Hepburn and Tracy. It's okay to have that relationship because it's not a problem for the spouse. So as long as it wasn't a problem for the spouse, she was okay. If it had been, she wouldn't have been there. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I just noticed something on my notes here. You know, I read these, I write them down, I talk with them, I record them, I talk to the author, and then I don't remember. So just having my memory jogged, I went, oh my God, I didn't put two and two together. He went on to marry Jane Wyman.
Oh, wow.
I know. I just covered Jane Wyman. The name Fred Karger, the name doesn't stick with me. It's just not, I don't know. It doesn't adhere to my brain cells. So he went on to marry Jane Wyman. But this is the particular relationship where Marilyn stayed close with his mother and his sister and his ex-wife and the daughter for the rest of her life. I
But
just thought that
so
was...
that the wife wasn't Jane Wyman when Marilyn was there.
No, he got
It's a different.
divorced. Yeah,
Oh,
he finally got divorced. And he went on to marry Jane Wyman. But Marilyn kept up this beautiful relationship, really, with his extended female relatives. I think it's great.
She treasured people.
Yeah.
Because in her early life, she didn't have them.
Yeah.
It's like she was building her own family that
Yes.
wasn't there. So she collected people to add to her inner circle. And to
it was
her, they were
really
family.
It was sincere, though. You can feel it, right? It was just really sincere, and it was mutual. That's the other thing about it. I'm getting chills. It was mutual. It was a wonderful thing to behold. Really, an example of how we all should be. So she met all these people at parties. This one guy, Johnny Hyde, who was a William Morris agent. He said, I'm going to make you a big star. Stick with me, baby. So he was 31 years older than she. And he left his wife and children. He wanted to be with Marilyn. She said no. And I wanted to talk about that. I think that's great. What happened there?
Marilyn, can you tell us about Johnny Hyde? You said no to him. What was going on there? Well, I was flattered, of course, but it was not a connection that I wanted to pursue. He had a family. There was nothing that drew me to him. He was not the kind of people that I wanted to include in my inner circle. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, what was in the book was that she wanted to marry for love and not for money. There were any number of times in her adult life where she could have said yes and been set up for life. And people like to call her a gold digger because they were jealous, and they did buy into that stereotypical persona.
Yeah.
That wasn't what she was about at all. And it gets real complicated towards the end of her life because people made a lot of assumptions. I'm dying to ask some questions there. So she did spend time with him, and these older men kind of was like Pygmalion. They kind of helped her to refine her whole social thing.
So she's showing me. It's flattering, of course, when somebody puts all that out there, but she kept him at arm's length because he was not her kind of people. He was never going to be her inner circle.
Well, Marilyn, don't assume we all understand. We don't all get offers from millionaires every week.
Yeah.
More is the pity. So anyway, what was so interesting? I think we'll have to ask if this was typical. Was she typical and we don't know it? Or was it unusual? She was naturally smart about exercising. She rode her bike to work, and this is in LA. I mean, nobody ever did anything didn't include a car. She rode her bike to work. She ran all the time. She had the strictest diet I've ever heard of. It was so disciplined. And I kind of want to ask a question about that. But first, the whole exercise being such an important thing to her without becoming crazy. Where did she learn that?
Marilyn, where did you learn about exercise and the importance? She's saying Jack LaLanne, but that would have been after, I think.
No, he had health clubs. He had health clubs in California. The TV show didn't come first. As a child, I'm remembering that there were these
Okay.
people didn't go to the gym really. The gyms were for muscle men, and he was one of the first to do. And the other one was a guy called Vic Tanny. And Vic, does she remember Vic Tanny?
Do you remember Vic Tanny? Sure, he was around, but it was Jack that she noticed. And there was just something about him that was common sense
Yeah,
that made it clicked with her because of her background. And she came from a background of people who were common sense people. And they did activities like riding bikes. That was part of a normal life.
yeah.
It felt good to her, so why shouldn't she do it?
Well, I'll tell you why, Marilyn, because I'm lazy and I hate exercise. And I remember Jack LaLanne when I was a child. It was always on TV every morning, Jack LaLanne. So in the summertime, I'd see it. And periodically, I'd have a crisis of conscience and try to get healthy and try to do that because it's lifelong. And it would lasted about 5 minutes. So I'm so impressed with her self-discipline. I mean, that's not everybody says, oh, this feels so good, I'm going to do more tomorrow. It's not usually how it
Well,
works.
it was also a way to work off stress. And remember, she had trouble sleeping, so
Yeah.
she had a level of stress in her life. So that physical activity helped to wear her out a little so she could sleep.
This is a little off the topic, but you kind of triggered a question. Did you dream? Did you have dreams when you slept?
Marilyn, do you remember? Did you dream? I didn't often remember dreams, and when I did, they tended to be nightmares. I couldn't tell you about happy dreams. I don't have a memory of that, but the occasional nightmare.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Have you been plagued in your life ever with nightmares?
Me?
Yeah,
Oh,
just
when I was younger. Yeah.
you were. See, I've only had one or two in my entire life, but I dream all the time. Sometimes I wake up and I'm exhausted. Just things going on, and a lot of the time I don't remember exactly, but to me it feels like a pity, kind of a loss to not have a rich dream life when you sleep. That's I
Well,
feel bad.
it's for mental health. Dreams are good for your mental health.
Well, if that were true, I'd be a whole lot more nervous. Okay, I'll take your word for it. Anyway, so she went to classes and she took literature classes at UCLA. I'm curious, what was your favorite book?
Marilyn, did you have a favorite book that you could highlight for us? Well, more than one, and she's mentioning the prophet specifically.
Oh,
So that one from the existential level of beingness. That's why she appreciated that one. What?
Khalil Gibran.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So any others?
Well, that's an interesting book to be reading when you're a gold digging blonde bombshell. Nobody gives
Yeah,
her
yeah.
credit. It's ridiculous. And she
She's
also
in the classics. She's mentioning Moby Dick. She appreciated that, and Dickens. She appreciated Dickens.
my favorite author. I have so much in common with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, and I'm hearing Madame Bovary.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, she was really drawn to the classics. And kind of, she's saying a little sheepishly, it was kind of a highbrow thing to do to lean into the classics. That was what was
Mhm.
done in certain circles. But then
Mhm.
she surprised herself by really enjoying them.
Well, I think it's remarkable. I didn't have any choice. I went to kind of old fashioned schools, and the emphasis was put on cultural literacy and the history of the written word and the importance of it. So it always surprises me that people are not familiar with certain authors or books, and it's not coming from a like a snob point of view. It's just, it takes me by surprise. I thought everybody knew who the Marx Brothers were, you know. It just
Yeah.
surprises me. So I love when I hear that people who didn't have it shoved down their throats at an early age would seek it out as adults. I find that remarkable.
Yeah, she
And
keeps popping more in.
oh, what?
Chekhov and Faulkner and the Odyssey.
I love Faulkner. Dickens, go back to Dickens. That's
Did you want to ask about?
No, that's okay. Did she ever read any Agatha Christie?
Did you read Agatha Christie? No, that was not her
Oh,
style of book. She was really into the deeper stuff.
the deeper stuff. Well, some of us, you know.
She thinks of Agatha Christie as escapism. And she didn't want to escape.
Yes. Okay.
She didn't
Wow.
want to escape.
Oh, that's very
She
impressive.
wanted to go deep. She really probably would have been a good psychologist because she had
Yeah.
a curiosity about people and
Yeah.
why they did certain things.
She sort of befriended Carl Sandburg. Can she talk about that?
What about Carl Sandburg? Can you tell us about that relationship? Oh, I felt so inferior to him. He was so smart. I enjoyed listening to him, but I could only take him in small doses because he did tend to go on a little bit. He was a little stuffy. Let's be honest about that.
Well, that's funny because he spoke so highly of her. He talked about how smart she was. That's astounding. That's so funny. Yeah,
So what it feels like is when he was with her, he put on airs because of who she was.
to rise
He
to her
wasn't.
level, yeah.
He wasn't being his authentic self with her, which is sad.
Well, you know, the very fact that she would even know who he was, you know, it's just astounding. She also was, well, she had a passing acquaintance. I don't know if she would call it a friendship, but with Carson McCullers, I think. She talked about that.
Carson McCullers.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Carson McCullers? You were friends? Not close friends, more
Right.
acquaintances, but kind of on the edge of that. Slightly friendly, not deeply friendly. And she didn't have as much respect for him as she did for some of the other writers. I don't know. He wasn't at the same level.
Carson McCullers, well, it was a woman, but she was what was wrong with her? She had something wrong with her, physically wrong. I think she had tuberculosis, I think, but she died very young. She was in her 30s when she died, but she was an alcoholic, and so she's kind of a mess. You know, she was really a mess, but a brilliant writer. And somebody did arrange for them to meet and eat lunch together, and I just thought that was so interesting because how many famous celebrities, I'll use the word celebrities of today, would seek out and agree to have like an in-depth literary conversation with somebody who was kind of an egghead, you know?
Yeah. But here's something that's maybe not known. I don't know. Carson had a male soul.
Well, how would I know that?
Well, I don't know if it was written, because what I'm trying to get at is came across that way.
Lesbian.
Lived a certain lifestyle. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it was out, but Marilyn's identifying this person as a he.
I would not be surprised if that were true, and not well known because of the time. And she was from the South. Double whammy, right? Right. Expectations.
So, but there was a lot of conflicting energy there that Marilyn did not vibe with, which makes sense given her own confusing upbringing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. There was ex-husbands excluded for the moment. What other authors literary figures did she meet that she was impressed with?
So, were there other authors or literary figures that you met that you were particularly impressed with? I'm not getting anything. She gave me so many authors before, but now it's like,
Yeah. Well, they have to be alive, right? She didn't. She met Hemingway. She didn't like Hemingway, did she?
what about Hemingway? She knew him, but didn't vibe with him.
Yeah,
Wrong
they both.
energy.
Yeah, yeah. And then Nunnally Johnson was a movie writer, a script writer, and he said a lot of really kind things about her after the fact, after working with her. And, it was in the context of a movie where she was blamed for delays and overcosts and trouble and rewrites of scripts. And that when the truth really came out, he defended her and he said it wasn't her fault. It was politics in the studio, and politics egos, and a lot of resentment that she was independent. We'll talk about that. She was very independent. Okay, let's see here. Let me search for another good question. Earl Wilson was a columnist, and he didn't write very nice things about her. What did she think of that? What did she think about the negative publicity that she kept getting?
The columnist Wilson. What did you think about him? Scummy trash.
I agree. That's crack up.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, she's a good judge of character. So
Yeah.
she had another very rich older man who was drawn to her. Henry, I hope I say this right. Henry Rosenfried. Did I say that right? He was a clothes manufacturer. He was one of the first to do mass market, clothes made to be sold, like when you go into Target and there's
Yeah.
60 dresses all exactly the same dress. That he was one of the first to do that. And he wanted to divorce his wife and he wanted to be with Marilyn. And they kept in touch all their lives. He was always there to support her. Does she have anything, that she could say about that relationship? I know it was important to her.
Yeah. So Marilyn, Henry Rosenfried, the department store guy,
I think
just to be sure about the name.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
So can you tell us about him? You were friends with him. He was a very dear man. Not somebody that I wanted to spend my life with, but a very dear man, very supportive. He's one of those people who saw beyond the glitz and the glamour to the real person. I could be myself with him. That was what was so appealing. I looked for people like that who I could spend time with, relaxing, not having to act the part of Marilyn. I could be Norma Jean with him, and that meant the world.
Yeah, I think he started poor, and I think he worked his way up, made a difference. Okay, let's see here. It talks a bit about her devolving relationship with Natasha, the coach. She met John Huston. She had a small role in the movie The Asphalt Jungle, and she met John Huston. And then later, he figured very prominently in one of her movies. He was the director. We could talk about that later, but since he's on my mind, let's just get right into it. What did you think of John Huston?
Marilyn, what did you think about John Huston? Well, she didn't hold the high opinion of him that many did. She found him abrasive, demanding, unkind. He was like an unmovable boulder, and there just was no flexibility with him, which made her feel hemmed in and unable to fully lose herself in the role, because it was too constricting. He didn't have that flexibility with her because of his idea of who she was, where other directors allowed her more latitude. And he allowed other actors more latitude. This was something he preserved for her.
Huh. Well, the later in her career, they made a movie where she was a star, but he blamed her for cost overrides. So he was pocketing the money to go gambling every night, but he blamed her, and he blamed her for delays, and it was his fault. He'd be drunk and he wouldn't be able to get his act together till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Ooh, how did that affect her opinion of him?
So, Marilyn, how did it affect you when Houston blamed you for the overruns and all of the lateness? Well, she was pissed about it because it wasn't true. And she didn't like being anybody's scapegoat. But fortunately, she did have people around her who knew the truth
Yeah.
and would stand up for her. And by that time, enough people were on to Houston's antics that it didn't hurt her in the way it might have earlier in her career. But, she was offended by it.
Well, a lot of this stuff fed the gossip columnists, Llewellyn
Yeah.
Parsons and Hedda Hoppers. They had a field day with the lies and the rumors, and I always felt like that was so unfortunate because we all fell for it. We all fell for the stereotype, the fake image, that they were portraying of her, that she was mentally unwell, she was unstable, she was addicted, she was a drinker, she was unfaithful, she was constantly man hopping, she was a gold digger. And it takes very little research to find out that all of that, they were all lies. It's just character assassination. It's horrible. And it continues to this day. I mean, I don't want to get into it, but there are movies and books that continue to come out that just misrepresent. Goddess is a movie that came out about her in the not so distant past, and well, I'll ask later. So she was in All About Eve with Joseph Mankiewicz as the director. Just does she realize that his children went on to become famous? His son, I think it's his son, or is it his grandson? Josh Mankiewicz is one of the illustrious hosts of Dateline. And his other son, Ben, is the host of Turner Classic Movies. Does she care? I always think it's fascinating, these little connections. Yeah.
So, Marilyn, any comments about the Mankiewicz kids and how they went on to have their own famous careers? Well, they had a good father. They had a good role model. So it's not surprising that they did. And many children in Hollywood followed in their parents' footsteps in one way or another. When you've got those connections, why wouldn't you use them? That's just being smart. So I'm happy for them.
I just found something out myself recently that just surprised the heck out of me. And she was in this movie, All About Eve, with Betty Davis and Ann Baxter. Ann Baxter was Eve, right? Does she know who Ann Baxter's grandfather was?
Marilyn, did you know who Ann Baxter's grandfather was? No.
Frank Lloyd Wright. Isn't that a mind blower?
I guess people have to be related to somebody.
Well, what are the odds? I don't know. It blew my mind because if you had asked me, okay, Ann Baxter, who would you predict her grandfather would have been? I would have gone in a completely different direction. Frank Lloyd Wright, what I know about him, it just didn't seem to fit. I think it's fascinating, really fascinating. I guess I'm the only one fascinated by it. Never mind, we'll move on. What did you think of Betty Davis?
What did you think about Betty Davis? She was tough as nails. But you know what? She had a soft heart underneath that gruff exterior. And she was kind to me. Not many people knew that. She had that other side to herself. I respected her greatly. She was a good old broad.
Betty Davis did an interview late in her life. She was very elderly. Dick Cavett had her on his show, and it was one of the most hilarious interviews because it was so uncomfortable. Because Dick Cavett was kind of a lighthearted, jokey guy, although he was quite intelligent and real intellectual. He could get into serious topics, but he was kind of teasing her in a good-natured way. She did not like it. It was a very, if you ever have the chance to see the interview between Dick Cavett and Betty Davis, it's well worth it. She took him down a couple of notches. So, in the story about the movie, at one point, Betty Davis yelled at Marilyn for needing a number of takes on a scene. And it says that Marilyn went into the bathroom and threw up after Betty Davis yelled at her. Does she remember that?
Yeah, so Marilyn, is it true that you went into the bathroom and threw up when Betty was hard on you? Yes. Yeah, she intimidated her because she was so good. And in the moment, you're so intense, you're focused, you're trying to do your best, and there's that nervousness about living up to these standards of those greats around you. So yeah, I was a mess of nerves, but I didn't hold it against her. She had high standards, and I really wanted to be my best.
Here. Several people mentioned, and she herself mentioned, an interest in a similarity with Jean Harlow. People often said, "You remind me of Jean Harlow." And I'm not just the hair, but you remind me of Jean Harlow.
Yeah.
And she herself expressed an interest in doing a movie about Jean Harlow, but she wanted it to be honest and authentic and not full of a lot of nonsense. And so I wonder if she could talk about that. Did she have, I always thought it was kind of a karmic relationship with Jean Harlow.
Marilyn, did you have a karmic relationship with Jean Harlow? They were sisters in a past life.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. They kind of both had the same personality and didn't get the credit for it. Jean Harlow, everybody called her baby and treated her, they infantilized her. She had a very domineering mother. And everybody who knew her said she was the kindest, most thoughtful, just a lovely person and hugely intellectual. She was writing a novel when she died, Jean Harlow, very similar to Marilyn Monroe in her kind of brainiac interests and soft heart, kind personality. I definitely could feel the similarity, although I don't, just talking about it, you can feel that they were connected.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Let me skip over some of this. Her friend Johnny, is that right? Johnny Hyde died. His heart gave out on him finally. And there was a lot of animus on the part of his family. They wanted every gift he ever gave her back to her, back to them. And it was terrible. Does she want to talk about that, or is that too sad?
Marilyn, would you like to say anything about your friend Johnny Hyde and his passing and the animosity with the family? It was so unfair to his memory that they behaved in that way. But she put it behind her. She wasn't going to let something like that get in the way. He was gone. There was nothing to be done for him. And those people were not worth an ounce of sweat from her.
Yeah, they were pretty avaricious at the end. It was mean-spirited. Speaking of mean-spirited, now we get to Arthur Miller. Actually, no, she met him. But unless I'm having a glitch in my brain. She married Joe DiMaggio first, right? So she met Arthur Miller and he escorted her someplace, some event. And they kind of had I think it was described as an electric shock when they shook hands. It was kind of could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Marilyn, tell us about this meeting with Arthur Miller and the electric shock. Is that true? Did that really happen? It did. There was something, you might call it kismet, that happened when we touched. And now I understand, of course, that we did have a past life together. So that was a knowingness, that was a recollection, even though we weren't conscious of it at the moment. We just felt it deeply. So we had to pursue a relationship, even though we were not aligned in this lifetime and did not make good partners. But it was something that we needed to explore, give it a try, see where it went. And now we've worked out that karma and we've moved on.
I totally get that moment of recognition. And it's often mistaken as love at first sight. And it's not that. It's more of a soul recognition. And, when I first ever saw my husband, I remember the moment. It was dramatic. And he was just getting into his car at 11 o'clock at night. And I didn't think, oh, swoon. Not at all. In fact, we didn't like each other. And, but I did say to my friend, who is that? I just knew, I just had that funny feeling. This person, I would not have been able to articulate it. And that's the sense I got from this meeting. They stayed friends, it said, and they traded books back and forth and that kind of thing for several years before anything other than that happened. But she's absolutely right. I think it's a soul recognition. Yeah. Okay. She got involved in the method acting, Stanislavski's method acting. Could you talk about that a little bit? This is before Strasberg even. She got into method acting. And it, to me, and to other people too, it felt like dredging up past trauma constantly to get that emotion to take on a role in a film was almost detrimental to herself, to her mental health. It was just torturing herself. Could she talk about that?
Marilyn, could you talk about your experience with method acting? How was that for you? Was it uplifting? Was it helpful? Or was it harmful to you? Well, in the beginning, I was very excited about it. I thought it would give me a deeper dimension to my work. But ultimately, yeah, it was like constantly ripping off the Band-Aid and exposing the wound, making it raw all over again and again and again and again. So over time, that begins to wear on you. It's debilitating.
Yeah.
That's what I would call it.
Yeah, it's detrimental.
Not a healthy way of being. So that didn't last long.
And there were people in her life, therapists, psychiatrists, doctors, agents, coaches, who played on that, because I think it was obvious that it kept her vulnerable and more controllable. Would she agree with that?
Marilyn, would you agree that your support system, your doctors, your psychiatrists, that they played into that vulnerability that you willingly took on with the method acting? Yes, I'd say that's a fair assessment. There were many hangers-on who just wanted to be close to the movie star. They wanted that, what do you call it? They wanted that connection. They wanted bragging rights that they were a part of Marilyn's world. So they were using me.
I'll make an observation here. She doesn't need to respond because it really becomes an issue later on. But They had ulterior motives. So now we're at an interesting point in her life where she meets Joe DiMaggio. And I'm going to make a big guess here. Just correct me if I'm wrong, Marilyn. I'm used to it. Joe DiMaggio came from, an Italian family. They were very family oriented. Was that the real allure?
Was that the core?
Allure, the allure.
Allure. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So, Marilyn, you and Joe, was it the solid family? Was that what you were drawn to? Well, of course, because I didn't have that, and it was something that I craved all of my life. And from the outside looking in, it seemed like the idyllic family, very supportive and loving. And then when I got on the inside, I discovered looks can be deceiving. To put it mildly.
Oh, we could make a whole separate video about that. No kidding. Hey, watch out for those big ethnic Catholic families. I'm just going to warn you. Okay. So she held him at arm's length because he wanted children and she didn't. But I was under the impression that she sort of did. Was it just not with him, or was it the wrong time, or what was the deal? Yeah.
Marilyn, tell us about your relationship with Joe and children. Did you want children with Joe? She's saying no. I did not think he was good father material.
Mm. Could you describe him? The impression that I get from what I've read, so I don't know, it's just what I've read, is he was controlling and very misogynistic. Is that true? Also given to trying to convince her with his fists. Is that true?
So can you talk about the relationship with Joe? Was there physical violence? Yes, there was. And, of course, that led into not wanting to have the children because she could have had a miscarriage if he got rough with her. But she said, he had this beautiful surface self, but underneath, he was dark, he was tormented, and he could be really mean. He could also be someone who would beat you down with words. And she felt crushed by him. She was like this beautiful flower, and he took her in his hands and crushed her, which makes it repugnant that for years he put flowers on her grave. When she was alive, he could have treated her with love and kindness.
And that's really forgotten about that.
Yeah. But he crushed her.
What was he tormented by?
Do you know what he was tormented by? He had abuse in his background, and he had self-esteem problems, although he put on a good show, because that's the way he was raised. You had to put on that front. It was almost like putting on this overcoat, and that was who you were to the world, but inside you're a mess.
I know what she's talking about because it's particular to the religion and the culture. It's a patriarchal, misogynistic way of being, but primary concern is what will the neighbors think? So there's this veneer that goes up. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's like wearing a mask for the world, and that's how she was taken in by him. But when she got to know the real Joe, the mask came off.
Marilyn, my grandmother had a description of that, a term for that. She had sayings and descriptions for a lot of things, but she called people like that a street angel and a home devil. Is that pretty accurate?
Not quite an angel, but yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're going along here, the book talks quite a bit about her rising star in Hollywood. She's getting better parts and more frequent roles and more publicity and more acclaim. Joan Crawford didn't like her very much. The story of Joan Crawford offering to give her wardrobe advice. Joan Crawford met her and didn't like what she was wearing and said, you know, if I could go over to your house and go through your closet, I could help you refine your wardrobe. Does she want to talk about that?
She just gave me a picture. When she looked at Joan Crawford, she saw Medusa.
Oh, God.
She saw the dark heart.
Yeah. It was so nasty. I mean, she just wanted to get her foot in the door, go judge her. And poor Marilyn, I think we had 2 dresses or something. You know, it's like this or my other dress. It wasn't an issue of choice or taste. It was about money. And Joan Crawford she wasn't grounded in reality, you know. She had been nasty to her. See, the dress you're wearing is utterly incorrect. That's what she said to her. I have a question for Marilyn. How did you not just laugh in her face when she said that to you?
Well, you have to realize inside I was crushed because I was just an up and comer and I was very insecure, and she's the great Joan Crawford. So even though I could see that she had this dark heart, it still stabbed me like a knife, being judged in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. I tend to make light of things, but Joan Crawford, come on. Okay, so let's see here. She couldn't, it said in the book that Marilyn talked about it later and said that she couldn't really tell, as she calls her Miss Crawford, she couldn't tell her that she was broke, and she was looking at her wardrobe right now, what she was wearing. Yeah, I can see where that would be hard. Luella Parsons defended Marilyn. So she had a pretty good relationship with her, if I remember correctly. Is that true?
Is it true, Marilyn, that you had a good relationship with Luella Parsons? Well, as good as she had with anybody. But yeah, she was kind to me, and I was grateful for that.
How angry did she feel when she found out that she gets this plum role in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and they're paying her far less than the men in the film?
So can you talk about what it was like when you discovered that the men in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes were paid more than you? Oh, I was burning up inside about it, but it wasn't a surprise. That's the way things worked back then. And I just was determined that I was going to change that. And ultimately I did. That was about taking control of your life, embodying your power. It took me a while, but I finally got there.
Yeah, she did. So that Jane Russell was in the movie as well. And Jane Russell was, too bad she's not alive today. She'd be having a field day. She was a rabid, extreme right fundamentalist Christian, and she was always proselytizing. And this is a quote from the book from Marilyn. Jane tried to convert me to religion, and I tried to introduce her to Freud.
I love it.
So, could she talk a little more about Jane Russell and Jesus?
Yeah. So Marilyn, tell us about Jane Russell. It was a trial listening to her, but I tried to be kind. I knew she was coming from a place of real beliefs. I mean, she believed in what she was talking about. She was sincere, but it wasn't my way. And I would have preferred if she had kept it to herself and we'd had a professional relationship. So it was a little rough at times, but we made it work and we had a great hit movie. So nothing to complain about there.
Yeah, people remember that movie for sure. She appeared on the Jack Benny show, and he was really kind to her. The studio didn't want her to make special appearances, wouldn't let her accept money for appearances. So he gave her a new Cadillac because that's not money. So what did she make of Jack Benny? He's a hard one to kind of
Yeah.
understand. Yeah. What did you
Marilyn,
think of him?
tell us about Jack Benny. What was your impression of him? Well, he was one of those types who I would say was all bark and no bite.
Yeah.
He came across as being hard and sarcastic and rough, abrasive,
Tough.
but
Yeah.
inside, oh, he had a heart of gold. And yes, he was a true gentleman, one of the few.
I'm fascinated with this next little tidbit. So she's in this movie, How to Marry a Millionaire, and these three girlfriends are honing their skills to attract rich men, you know. And in the movie, Marilyn had to be the girl that wore glasses, you know,
Mhm.
and she had to pretend that without her glasses, she couldn't see anything. And she actually studied with a mime in order to learn how somebody would act physically who couldn't see what was going on around them. And could she talk a little bit about that? I think that's genius. And I just
That
wondered,
is, yeah.
yeah.
Marilyn, could you talk about your experience working with the mime for the How to Marry a Millionaire movie? Well, I was beside myself. I didn't know how I was going to pull that one off. So connecting with a mime, that was good fortune. And I learned so much. I studied and studied and studied. We did a lot of practice together. And truly, it made all the difference. And of course, you can see the results. So, was it genius on my part? Yeah, I'd say
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, let's take the credit. I'll tell you what, the other thing that she did, she was in this movie with uh oh god, was it Betty Grable, I think? Laura Nicole, somebody famous, really famous, you know, for the time. And they left the show for whatever reason, and Marilyn was given that dressing room. And there was a comment made she wouldn't put her name and her star on the door. Uh, as she felt it was offensive to the previous woman who was in there before her. She was always thinking about people's feelings and being careful about how her behavior affected the emotions of other people. That's not your typical egomaniacal, narcissistic Hollywood star, not by a long shot. Uh, Also, Betty Grable was really touched. Her daughter got injured during shooting. She got a phone call. Your daughter's been injured. She had to drop everything and run. And she said years later, you know, everybody on the set knew I had to leave. It shut that particular scene down. I had to be gone. Nobody bothered to follow up on it. The only person who bothered that night, Marilyn called and asked me how my daughter was. Just thoughtful, you know, really thoughtful.
Yeah.
So you can take this question however you want to take it, but I'm dying to know. So she was in this movie, River of No Return, with Robert Mitchum. And Robert Mitchum had a kind of notorious for something he liked to indulge in. Did she ever get stoned with Robert Mitchum? Am I kind of
Okay.
joking, but kind of not? Was she aware?
Yeah. So, Marilyn, were you aware of Robert Mitchum's secret habit? Oh, everybody knew about it. It
It was
wasn't a
no
secret.
secret. He went to
So,
jail for it.
okay. So, did the two of you ever light up together? Well, I wasn't much of a smoker, but yeah, I can admit I took a couple of puffs.
I had a feeling. That's what. Was he nice? He seems like he was a nice guy, Robert Mitchum.
So, tell us about your impression of Robert Mitchum. How did he treat you? He treated me with like wearing kid gloves, gently,
Oh,
respectful, kind. I wasn't expecting that.
I
Anything
was.
else you want?
I always
Yeah.
thought he was kind, quiet, you know, an intense person, but not intense, nasty, intense, nice. I got good vibes from him. I'm not surprised at all. So it's nice. She almost drowned making that movie. She had waders on, you know, and got pulled under. and several men had to jump in and haul her out. And then she was in a, I don't know if she was in a cast or a splint. Yeah, her foot was in a cast for a while. You know who we haven't mentioned in passing, and she met him early on in her career, and he became her faithful full-time go-to. He was, oh God, was he makeup or was he hair? Whitey, her friend Whitey. She talked about him.
Tell us about your friend Whitey. True blue friend to the end. Can't say enough good things about him.
I hate to ask this question because I can't remember. Was he hair or makeup?
Was he your hairdresser? He was makeup.
Makeup. Okay. Yeah, he was around and he was faithful to her and he cared about her and really was a friend. Yeah. He carried her around after she got in a cast.
Yeah, she said she felt cherished by him. And that was rare.
And he had a girlfriend, right? Or was he married? He had a girlfriend.
Did Whitey have a girlfriend? Yeah, he was involved with somebody.
So Joe DiMaggio is back in the picture here. And he was always inserting himself between her and her career. He didn't want her to stay to do the retakes. He didn't want her to stay to do the stuff they did after filming. He didn't want her to do the publicity. That famous picture of her with the skirt, the white pleated skirt blowing up.
Yeah.
He went off and got drunk with somebody because he couldn't handle his, I don't know if they were married yet, but his woman exposing her underpants. I guess that was his big problem. It was ridiculous. He would sulk. He would stand off stage, kind of in the wings when they were filming off set, and just sulk and make everybody uncomfortable. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this was the first time they were together.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
I think it's like this is as their relationship developed. This is
Okay.
Joe DiMaggio. And as their relationship developed, this is before Arthur Miller. As he became more of part of her life, both before and after they got married, as he became part of her life, he became more and more jealous and obstructive and controlling. He wanted her to go live with his mama in San Francisco and make little babies. That's what I mean. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but that's the impression I got.
Yeah. So Marilyn, can you validate that? Is that true? He wanted you to go and live in San Francisco and have babies? Yeah. Can you imagine if I had done that? What a disaster. So glad I didn't do that. But yeah, here's the thing. You're probably wondering, why did I put up with it for so long? But you got to understand, he had another side to him. He had the romantic side, the one who could sweep you off your feet with all the gestures. And when he was on the good side, he was hard to resist until he turned the dark side. And then he became hard to take. But the thing is, because of my schedule, we had gaps of time where we were apart. So that when we came back together, it was like the honeymoon.
Right.
Yeah.
She's smart. She's got to know that this is now actually symptomatic of a diagnosis. That's coercive control. That's love bombing. And then it deteriorates. And then the stress point reaches an explosion. And then they separate, just physical distance or what emotional distance for a while. She goes and makes a movie, for example. And then it starts all over again. And it's a cycle. Yeah. I mean, she knows that, right? I mean, now.
Well, she knows it now, but she didn't know it then.
I don't think a lot of people knew it then.
Yeah. She had stars in her eyes,
But it's very effective. And he didn't have to be Joe DiMaggio to make that work. In relationships, it happens all the time. It's symptomatic of an abusive relationship. And they now describe that set of behaviors as red flags. If you see this happening, you need to recognize this is what you're involved in, this cycle of mistreatment and abuse. But
if you're a woman who grew up without a father, You didn't have that understanding of what the male presence was all about. So you're always looking for that daddy. So he was daddy.
And if you went through the kind of trauma, we won't go into it, but the kind of trauma she went through over and over again in her childhood, you become desensitized to mistreatment. So it's
Yeah.
a struggle your whole, unless you get a lot of help. And in those days, the awareness, the understanding wasn't there in the professional field. And the professionals who did treat her took advantage of her. They didn't really care about her well-being. It's a terrible thing. I want to talk to her about that as we move forward. Yeah, we have not quite there yet, but it's just reprehensible. I get mad every time I think about it or read about it. So they got married. The book asks the question of the reader, so why did you marry him? I think she answered that, and I understand. I think women especially are men. It can happen to men too, but women are easy prey to fall into that because of social expectations and gender roles and or patriarchal stupidity, right?
Yeah.
Not on the part of the woman, stupidity on the part of the patriarchy. So she went to Korea, she went to Japan, and she went to Korea. And we could talk all day about that. I won't belabor it. But she was just astounded. I think she was met by 5,000 people at the airport. She had no idea. You know, it must have been stunning. What was that like to realize how popular you were?
Marilyn, can you talk about your experience when you went to Japan and were met by all of those people? What was that like for you? It took my breath away. Overwhelming. I knew that I had fans, but didn't have the concept of how massive it was and how my influence, even in a foreign country,
Yeah.
could be so vast. It was stunning and took a little while. I was in shock. Took a while to adapt. Yeah, stunning.
She got a string of pearls from, I believe, the Empress. I don't remember. Did she meet her?
Did you meet the Empress of Japan? Yes.
What was that like?
So what was that like for you, meeting her? It was very formal. It's not like we had a chance to sit down and chat like girls. So it was all the protocol, and it was brief. Didn't really get to know her, but I could see that it was not a life I wanted. I was already dealing with my own issues of being controlled by a man. And
Speaking of control. Did she have the opportunity to get any, to bring home any of those gorgeous fabrics?
did you get to bring home any of the beautiful fabrics from Japan? Oh, yes. Yes, they were gifted.
I'm so jealous. Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so she decided she was talked into by, I want to say Cary Grant. Is that right? To go to Korea and perform for the US. So was it Cary Grant?
Was it Cary Grant who persuaded you to go to Korea? No.
Who was
Was
it?
it another actor? This is weird. She said Broderick Crawford. I don't even know if they crossed paths.
Well, why would she say it if they hadn't?
I don't know. That's the name that came in. So I don't know. Maybe she knew him and he thought it was a good idea.
I don't know. I thought that some star and his significant other kind of talked her into it. But you know, this book is so huge. I didn't write down every single thing I read, or I could have written another 700-page book. But she was convinced that this would be a good thing to do. She really wanted to do it. It didn't take a lot of convincing. But Joe had a big, gigantic sulk. Can she describe that?
Were they playing baseball in Korea back then?
He was playing baseball in Japan. You're right. He went for some baseball thing in Japan, and she went with him and, made the big star appearances. And he wasn't best pleased that she was the center of everybody's attention. He was jealous, and he was a narcissist. And she got talked into continuing the trip to go to Korea. This was during the war. Go to Korea and entertain the troops. And she was remarkable. You have to read the book. The description of what happened when she was in Korea, absolutely mind-blowing. Nothing, dramatic, just her behavior and her ability to tough out bad living conditions. And she never once played the diva, and she insisted on the crew that worked with her being treated equally. I mean, the stories just go on and on about her kindness and thoughtfulness and generosity. And so she went to Korea, but Joe had a hissy fit. Could she talk about that?
Yeah. So, Marilyn, could you tell us about Joe's hissy fit when you went to Korea? Oh, he was impossible. He was in one of his rare forms, out dark to the max, ranting and raving and swearing, pacing about. He was like a caged lion. A little frightening, I have to say. But you know what? I really wanted to go. It was important to me. And it didn't matter what he said. I was set on going. And he knew that, which infuriated him all the more. We had a knockdown, drag out fight about that.
Yeah.
But I was not going to give in on that point.
That's what happens when you defy a narcissist. That's what happens. So what did you think of Korea? Just, briefly.
Can you tell us your impressions of Korea? It's a beautiful place. The people were kind to me. I spent most of my time with the troops, and they were very kind. They were very happy to see me and made me feel very appreciated. So, all in all, it was warm, it was wonderful, and I'm so glad that I went. And she's saying some of the boys that she met there didn't come back.
Yeah, it's weird you would say that. I was just thinking about.
I feel that really deeply in the heart chakra. She really felt that.
That's weird. I picked up on that. I was thinking of the crowd. There's a picture of her standing on the stage, and you can see the panorama of the crowd. It was thousands of people. And I was just thinking, boy, I wonder how many of them didn't come back. Yeah, it's really sad. Okay, so let's see here. Is this about the time? I should know this, but it's her life, so I'll ask her. Is this about the time when she started getting into conflict about the contract and made the decision to go do her own production company?
Was the time frame that you went to Korea, was that approximately when you were starting to work on your own production company? No, that came after.
A little bit later, yeah. There's a mention here about just her, not notoriety, but her public recognition grew when she came back. And there was this guy called James Haspiel, who was like her number one fan and had sort of created a fan club. And I think today we would have called him a stalker. What kind of relationship did they have? Was she a little uncomfortable about that, or did she just embrace it as a friendship?
So can you tell us about James Haspiel and your relationship? What was that like? Well, in the beginning, it was good. He was supportive, and I felt that he could be helpful to me. But over time, he started to get possessive, and I started feeling that same sense of cloying captivity that I felt with my husband. And I started to get worried about it. So at that point, then I started moving towards separating. Yeah, I don't know what that means, but.
Well, he popped up everywhere she went. I mean, she would at one point, well, later on in the story, they're in a car accident. she and Arthur Miller, the day they were going to get married, they get in this car accident. Well, they didn't get in the accident. They responded. They were right behind the accident, and they responded. And Haspel shows up, and this is, before cell phones. He always seemed to pop up like a bad penny. So the book talks quite a bit about the whole situation with Joe and his moods, and then the constant struggling at work to be recognized and to get decent roles. And she wanted good scripts. She didn't want to be the blonde bombshell dummy, and because she wasn't like that, and it was a real struggle. So she decided to get divorced, and she hired an attorney. I thought this was hilarious. She hired an attorney who got 5 assistants to hire the PR around her divorce. That's how famous she was at this point. They had to hire 5 people to handle all the requests, I guess, for interviews, and not interviewing her, but just information and stuff. Did she have any idea that it was going to be that much public interest?
Marilyn, could you comment on the experience of needing 5 PR people to help with the all the hullabaloo around your divorce? It was a surprise that it was as large as it was, but at that point I was starting to get an inkling that this is the new chapter of my life where it was going to be that way. And when you get to that level of success, there are compromises you have to make. So I was starting to become aware of the changes that were going to be necessary in my life. It was a come to Jesus moment. So you want the success, but you don't necessarily want all of that attention. And it's a juggling act you've got to be comfortable with. You've got to find a way to keep all the balls in the air if you want to continue living that life. And I did. It was worth it to me. It was a struggle, but it was worth it.
So they are processing this divorce, and they did, you had to give a reason. It was before no fault divorces, and people would claim mental cruelty or infidelity, or they would have to make accusations. She alleged mental cruelty because she didn't want to talk about the abuse that went on, and they got their divorce. But I wanted to know about, after the fact, he was still stalking her and in her life. And I just wonder, did she have trouble herself, not just trouble with him, but trouble herself making a clean break?
Can you talk about the ongoing connection with Joe DiMaggio after the divorce? Were you complicit to that? Did you encourage him to be around? Did you want him around? She was conflicted. She
Yeah.
missed the good times, but she also remembered the bad times. So she was conflicted. And yeah, it's partly my fault. I would sometimes go back to him, and then I would remember why I left, and I would leave again. And yeah,
I think that's very common, and I don't. We're not pointing fingers here. Just trying to understand. Things might be treated very differently today. Is she aware of that? I mean, it really seemed to cross over into illegalities on his part. And she might have had a little bit more support from the legal system had it happened today, don't you think? I mean, he was spying on her. He bugged her house. He got involved with Frank Sinatra to have some thugs come and beat her up because he thought she was having an affair. Well, she was a single adult. She was having a relationship. And they went to break into the apartment where they thought she was, and they broke into the wrong woman's house, and it was a whole thing. It was a court case and a settlement, but Joe DiMaggio and Frank Sinatra got their mafioso boys to go after her. That kind of thing, you'd end up on Dateline,
yeah.
Nowadays. Yeah. So did she feel like, was she scared of him? I mean, the things he did.
Were you afraid of Joe? Yeah, because things escalated.
Yeah.
It escalated to the point where, yeah, you'd be crazy not to be afraid of him. And it was almost like, how far would he really go? And maybe I would end up dead. And that was a real wake up moment. That helped me to finally, in my heart, sever the tie and
Yeah.
move on, which in a way exacerbated things with him because he felt that distance. And that made him all the more crazy to come after me.
Men got away with a lot more. Not that they don't get away with it now, but
Yeah.
okay, so there's a whole big long rigmarole story of what happened with them breaking into this woman's apartment. He never admitted he was involved. He lied about it. Sinatra got sued, I think, and had to pay a settlement. It was just a whole ridiculous situation. So she had surgery. She had, could she talk a little bit about her health? I mean, I'm not trying to pry, but